Good evening, First Pentecostal Church. So glad to be able to greet you tonight. Tonight we're going to do something a little bit different. Recently I was able to sit down with three other pastors, and we began to discuss what the role of the church was and what the role that we have during this time of the pandemic or any kind of crisis, if you will, and discussing a few other topics. And I thought it might be of a great interest for you to see how we are dealing with these things and where we are moving forward. Before we get into that, I did want to say thank you so much for your faithfulness to the house of God. I've been really enthused by our turnout from our drive-in services that we've had and our drive-through prayer times. I'm excited about being able to have service under one roof this coming Sunday. You do not want to miss it. It's going to be a great time. And so come, we're making sure that we're going to have everything cleaned and sanitized. We're following the state regulations or recommendations rather for churches and what we are supposed to be doing. We're going to have a great time, and we're also immediately after the service, we're going to provide you a meal in a container instead of just serving it. Well, it will be in its own container for you to be able to eat, and just a time of socially distanced fellowship or whatever you want to call it. But I did want to also thank you so much for your faithfulness in your giving. It has been a blessing for the church during this time. It's been a lot of unknowns, but because of your faithfulness, we have been able to be faithful in our giving and our support of missions and our responsibilities that we have. So thank you. For those that are members of the church, you've received your tithing envelopes and whatnot to send in, or you know how to give. You can text any amount to 84321, or you can go online at fpcd.church and give that way. But again, I hope you enjoy this tonight with what we are doing. And just have a clear understanding where we are going forward, and just it was a fun time that I had also discussing with other area pastors what they're doing. And may God bless you. I can't wait to see you on Sunday. I love you very much.
Hello, and thank you for joining us for Table Talk. We're thankful today to be collaborating for pastors and for churches to help us navigate the COVID-19 pandemic, and specifically the response of the church and the individual churches that we pastor. And we're so thankful today to have Brother Dennis Landtroop from Sanctuary of Pentecost.
Thank you. Good to be here.
And Brother Chad Roberts from the Pentecostals of Marshall.
Thank you.
And Brother Shane Hayes from First Pentecostal Church in Dangerfield.
Thank you.
And of course, our host and moderator, Pastor James Moore, pastor of Longview First Church here in Longview, Texas. Thank you for having us, Brother Moore.
Amen. It's an honor. And I first of all, I want to say how much I appreciate each of you, brethren, our friendships. And, we're all doing the same thing in different places. And so it looks a little different for everybody. The Church of the Living God is global. It's different in every country. It's different in every city. And the needs of every congregation are different. So starting off tonight, what do you think the most significant impact of the COVID-19 pandemic has been on the church and on your church in particular?
Well, for us, we were doing some things online, Facebook Live for our services and things like that. We had just kind of got started doing that. This forced us to pay a whole lot more attention to that and really see the possibilities of it. We certainly have not mastered it or gained the most from it that we can, but it did really sort of force us, in a sense, to take a closer look at technology, how we can use it for the gospel. I'm probably the oldest guy here, I'm sure, and so I'm not highly technological, that type of thing. I'm not anti-technology, but I have not really focused on it as much. This has helped us. It has really certainly helped us to get a closer look at that and how we can really use this in a healthy way to get the gospel to people.
Amen.
For us, we weren't doing the online. We were not streaming our services but it really forced us to take a look and step outside of our comfort zone to make an impact. Crisis does not necessarily dictate direction, but it speeds up direction. Crisis is a major accelerator.
Amen.
And so it can be a good thing and it can be a bad thing. If you weren't prepared for it, you're in scramble mode for a time being at least, until you can get to the point to where you can do these things. And that has been us, but I've been very, very fortunate. We have a tremendous team that has really stepped up. Been thinking outside of the box on how we can effectively reach our community, reach our church, and make the most impact.
I agree with you, Brother Hayes. Luckily for us, we did have online streaming for our church. It was a closed group, still is a closed group. We haven't opened it to just the public yet. We may do that in the future, depending on how far COVID-19 and this pandemic stretches us. But right now it's to a closed group. We already had it in place, so I was thankful for that. It helped us to make that transfer from an in-person to an online situation a whole lot easier for our church folks. Outreach-wise, all of that, we'll probably get into that a little bit more later on in our discussion, but I agree that this pandemic has forced us to accelerate into the technology that maybe we weren't as aggressive about before, but now we have to be more aggressive to it. But luckily we had some things in place, and hopefully we had a strong enough foundation that we were able to transition smoothly. So I'm thankful for those things and excited to see what we can possibly do to grow, because I'm like every other pastor. I want it to be as effective as possible given the circumstances we're in. So,
Go ahead.
No, so I've always told our church the only two things that really make people pray are discipline and disaster. And there are a lot of things maybe the church has done out of discipline or structure and deal with disaster. I pastored through 3 hurricanes, and we had to reinvent ourselves. 3 hurricanes in 4 years, and we had to reinvent ourselves every time.
Right.
And this reminds me of that. So, what was that?
Well, I was just going to say one of the things that I wanted to add. This has been, in my opinion, a gracious wake-up call to the church.
right.
That God is giving us
Yes.
an opportunity. We have never been closer to His coming. And I think, when you read the parable of the 10 virgins, the 5 wise and the 5 foolish, they were all asleep. So I think for us, this has been, for the church, it's been a gracious wake-up call to let us know, hey, pay attention. There is something even greater that is going on in the spirit world. And so it's forced us to go outside, think how we are going to be effective in our community, and to realize that this thing's wrapping up right in front of our eyes.
And in conjunction with that, very early on in this started happening, I feel prompted by the Spirit, and I began to teach and preach about humility, and that we need to humble ourselves before the Lord and recognize that He has not changed, and this didn't surprise God.
Oh, no.
Right.
And so, if we will approach this properly. In fact, I referenced a quote about years ago. I read this. Ralph Waldo Emerson, in a commencement speech at a college, made this statement, and I never forgot it. He said to that class that day, he said, "This time, like all times, is a very good time if we but know what to do with it."
All right.
Yeah.
And I think if we can know what to do now, that from this can come a tremendous surge to help us achieve our goals. And of course, obviously, as apostolic pastors here, we all strongly believe in the whole gospel to the whole world. And you really get right down to it. Is there any other way that the whole gospel can get to the whole world other than through technology that we may not have used as the best we could? But now, like we've been awakened, as he said, we need to step into this opportunity.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. I think it's made us all reevaluate everything we're doing. And I've said a million times to our church, I don't believe God's nearly as concerned with what we're going through as He is how we go through it.
How we go to
Yeah, and so with that in mind, what do you believe the role of the church, and then the local church, which is our great concern, and then the individual church member, child of God, is throughout this process?
Well, I think that, again, this is trying times, and the only way for you to be effective in reaching out, you got to be healthy internally, foundationally. It's got to be stable in order for you to build.
Absolutely.
And right now, this has shook everything and everyone. Okay, even as a pastor, I'm doing things and operating in a whole nother venue than I've ever operated or seen operated in before. I've never thought I'd be a televangelist. I preached against Facebook usage while I was in the pulpit. Now I'm telling them they better be on Facebook while I'm in the pulpit. So
That's a major shift.
I think the first priority that I had as a pastor was how can I ensure the strength of my core, my foundation, those ones that are already here, because the only way they'll be effective in growing through this pandemic or in spite of the pandemic is if they are themselves strengthened spiritually. The only way that we can grow is if there's health. So I've tried my best to minister to the health of the local congregation and praying and believing that through that health the byproduct will be growth. So that's been our focus so far.
You know, God has brought the world to its knees right now, and He's brought the gods of this world to its knees. I mean,
yes.
when
Yes,
you're
yes.
closing down major sports arenas,
Yes.
and so it is a time for the church to step up. And the one thing that we have to do as a church, we've got to be adaptable. And as pastors, we have to be adaptable.
Right.
Our church members have to be adaptable. That, you know what, this is not church as usual anymore.
No.
I don't know that we will ever go back to church as usual anymore, because, you know, for us, for example, that had never done online, that's here to stay.
Yes, it
It
is.
is here to stay. It is not just a marketing tool. We're discovering that it has been an evangelism tool.
Yes, it is.
So we're having to explore these areas. So my responsibility as a pastor and and the head of our local church in working with our people is trying to be as innovative as we can. To still reach the same people that we have been trying to reach, make a difference in our community and our church. As you know, their responsibility is going to have to be, come alongside me,
Right.
work with me through this, because the whole world, the whole world is paying attention right now.
Yes, they are.
And they are paying attention to the church right now,
Right.
unlike
Right.
any other time in history.
Right.
They are wondering what we are going to do. What is your church going to do? You have people stopping by saying, how are you doing your services? Are you
Right.
going to do a drive-in service? Are you
Right.
going to do an online service? If you are, when, where, what's the website? All of these different things.
Yeah.
So we have got to be adaptable throughout this
Yeah.
whole thing.
And I think, part of what this has done is exposed the fact there has been effort to marginalize a church.
Right.
But this is bringing the church back
Oh, absolutely.
to the
Yes.
forefront, really.
Absolutely.
And while some, would say it's a non-essential thing, but now they're realizing, and it actually is, I think, people are seeing the church is essential.
Yes, more essential than
And
ever.
that while we have been marginalized, but now I believe it's our opportunity to rise up and say, no, the church is here. The church is here to stay. It was created for the ages. It wasn't just, the church was not designed for 33 AD. It was designed for the ages.
Right.
And we're here to stay until the Lord's through with us. However we have to change to fulfill the Word of God, we're going to do that. I've used this before in our church, but I think even more so now, I'd say we're going to use every method we can
Absolutely.
to reach people,
Definitely.
as long as it's not illegal, immoral, or fattening.
That's right.
We're going to do it.
Right.
To reach people.
Change the culture.
By
Yes, it
that,
is.
by that I meant was, we got to reach people where they are.
Right, absolutely.
And I think we're seeing now that there are ways that we can do that.
Mm-hmm.
That we may, I'll say, I'm not comfortable with.
Yeah.
And
Right.
I'm not comfortable speaking to a camera, or I'm not comfortable with that type of thing. But we just have to grow. And
Right.
we got to grow as well as our people,
Yeah.
Yes.
to embrace this.
Well, Andrew, I'm going to ask you a follow-up question on what you just said. And first of all, in my life, not just as a minister, but before my preaching ministry, I never dreamed I'd get to do what I'm doing with my life. Thank God for that. It's not a burden to me. I count it a joy. But I've noticed just as a soul winner, I noticed as a 15-year-old new convert, that most people are open to the gospel during transition. Marriage, divorce,
Absolutely.
Right.
death, birth, job
Right.
loss, new job, in college, graduation.
Yeah.
And so I think we all have a huge opportunity right now. We had, at our drive-up service Sunday, we had neighbors we had never met who heard practice and came to the service.
That's awesome.
So you just mentioned your ministry and changing and challenging the way you do it. I'd like to hear from you, brethren, the challenges of preaching to a camera, of teaching to a camera. I believe, preaching is so spiritual.
Yes.
It's not a speech. I took speech class. That's
Right.
apples and
Right.
oranges.
Yeah.
There's a spiritual element. And whether you're teaching a Bible study at a kitchen table, or whether you're preaching to a cathedral packed with people, or any point in between, there's a spiritual exchange. And I was shocked the first time we recorded at just how uniquely odd it was. And I personally believe, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, because I could be a million miles off. I'm not very good at this yet. I'm very comfortable in front of anybody. I'm not comfortable in my office with a camera at all, or a sanctuary with a camera, or anywhere else. I believe that you can, and let's take even the gospel out of it. If you're speaking to people in person, you can incite a crowd, you can amuse them, you can engage them. But when you're in an empty room speaking to a camera, I think you have to reason with people. And so it's made me reevaluate the way I even put my notes together. How has this affected your, what we would normally call pulpit ministry, if you're even using a pulpit right now?
Well, they say that we should, and I have a few times and was very comfortable listening to myself. I'm just one of those kind of guys. I can't stand to hear myself. But even my wife had mentioned recently that you probably should more now, because it's different. And so I like to hear from these younger guys here. You're probably a little more comfortable with that type of thing. I mean, I've never been to Toastmasters or anything like that. I mean, I do read books about communication, obviously. And honestly, I am more comfortable at a table with a Bible study chart with a family than even now than in the pulpit. Somebody asked me the other day, do you still get nervous when you preach? I still do,
Right.
I still get butterflies, I have managed to go flying in formation somewhat, but it's still a very different thing for an introvert to be a preacher. I'm just kind of getting a little more comfortable with that. And now we got all these changes coming. So it's like, okay, guys want to keep growing this. Right. But you guys are probably more familiar with, maybe speaking to a camera type thing.
Not so much. One would think, but for me, I've gone back and I've listened to myself. I've discovered that I stutter. I sound like a Morse code going out. My kids came into the kitchen the other day, one of them, and he said, "Hey, Dad, I would like." And, well, that if you're wondering why he's grounded now. I say hallelujah way too much as a Philistine. And so it's been brutal. But knowing that I'm having to speak to a camera and not being able to speak in front of a typical congregation, it has forced me to step outside my comfort zone, listen to myself, critique myself, and make a conscious effort in how my delivery is. Now, thankfully, we went to a drive-in, say I'm doing it now, drive-in service, and I'm able to communicate because even though people are in their cars, there are people there.
Yeah.
At least there are people there. I'm not staring at an empty sanctuary.
Right.
So it's very uncomfortable to do that because I love people. Yes. I am a people person. As we ministers with pastors, we better be people.
Right.
People. That's what God has called us to do. I love being around people, and having that put to a screeching halt has killed me on the inside. Yeah. Not being able to have that daily contact, that one-on-one time with the church. And I remember Brother Huntley made the statement years ago that he could count on one hand how many Sunday mornings he would ever give up because that was his time with his church. And I get that. I understand that now. And now not to have that. And so, but again, what it has done is it has provided an opportunity to be a better speaker, to be a little bit better, more conscious of how I put my notes together, and to make more of an effort.
Well, I guess I'm the odd duck at the table to some degree because I've gone back and listened to myself yearly. And before we did online, I did CDs, and at least once or twice a year I will go back and I will listen to myself because, and I take that back to my time at TBC as a student and then as an instructor, is that it was one of the ways in hermeneutics or homiletics that we encourage students to help better themselves in their presentation was to go back and listen, because nothing will open your eyes to your presentation more than listening or seeing yourself. And if you can watch yourself, it takes it to a whole nother level. So
That's what I'm afraid of. That's what I'm afraid of.
and
I wonder how anybody's still.
I keep a copy of the first sermon I ever preached, just so that I can go back and listen to that and say I never want to go back to that level of communication again. I always want to be better than that. So the online aspect doesn't bother me. The camera aspect doesn't bother me. The absence of my congregation is what bothers me.
Yes.
I can minister the Word of God with the confidence that it's the Word of God and it's effective, but the absence of being able to be personal and to touch the lives of my people, to walk out into the congregation and to lay hands on someone and to pray with them in that moment. There is an ebb and a flow of the Holy Ghost. Matter of fact, the Bible says, let the congregation say amen and amen. It is biblical for there to be an ebb and flow, and you cannot get that.
You can't.
So no matter, I feel like no matter your age group or your acquaintance or to technology, to preaching online, not preaching online, none of that matters, because it will never be the same as the ordained method of ministering with people present. So whether you're comfortable with it or not, getting comfortable with it, listening to yourself, watch yourself, none of that is going to replace what our heart's desire is, and that is to get back to being able to have that personal interaction one-on-one, because it is not the same to preach your guts out, feel God's presence, and there not to be an amen.
So true. So true.
So you miss that. No matter how comfortable or uncomfortable you are with the online aspect, you're going to, if your passion is that biblical mode, I think you're going to miss that and not be so quote unquote comfortable with it. I'm not happy with the situation. I'm ready for it to be over.
Yes. Well, we're still going to have to find a way to meet the scriptural mandate to
Yes.
assemble together.
Right.
So, and I know, talking about speaking to the camera or to an empty church, I don't know that preaching is monologue anyway.
No,
At
it's
least it's a
not.
conversation.
Yes,
in
it
a
is.
sense
We
to
preach
me.
for a response.
Because
Yes, we do.
if it's just a nod or a look in the eye,
Right.
I think we all need some kind of feedback coming from
Right.
the congregation.
Yes, absolutely.
And if it's nothing more than an anointing, you might say,
Yes,
from the
absolutely.
congregation. I know I'm largely inspirational. I have more recently become a little more structured with my notes, writing down what I want to say to make sure I got what I felt the Spirit said for me to say. And that's been helpful, because when you're speaking in a limited time frame and to a camera, you certainly don't want to spend a lot of time just saying amen or filling in. You want to make sure you use that time wisely to say what you want to say. But when that is not coming back, there's no feedback, it is very challenging. So the people of God are very important.
Oh,
I
absolutely.
want people to know that, hey, you are very important, because
Why
even
would
in
they
preaching, even though
Yes.
I may be doing the speaking, but what is coming from you is just as powerful.
Just as powerful.
And it's affecting people. The Word of God is affecting people because you're there and you're, in a sense, amening that.
Right.
You are there supporting that. And it creates a flow for God to
Absolutely.
work. So we got to find ways to assemble together, going forward.
In regard to that ebb and flow, I view what we're doing right now as a substitute for what is our principal purpose and role. and to substitute the ebb and the flow. What I have found has helped me emotionally, mentally, is to go back immediately after I finish my sermon to our live broadcast, because we don't delete them, they're archived, and I go back and I look at every comment and I respond to their comments,
Yeah.
and I get their
That's
feedback.
excellent.
And it has fed me as a pastor to know that my people were behind their pastor,
That's so good.
and I get to interact. And also, to me, it's the accountability. If I say something good and I know it's good, you're going to say amen. Because I'm going to ask for it. Amen, church. That's what we do, right?
Shamelessly.
As a pastor, I'm going back and I'm looking at their comments and I'm responding.
Yeah.
Thank you. I agree. That's wonderful. I appreciate it. And what it does is it creates the back and forth that I'm missing. And I don't feel like I dropped the ball. I don't feel like it's empty. I don't feel like it fell short.
That's
To
good.
me, it is the substitute for that. And they know pastor's going to go back and he's going to comment and he's going to interact. And they get that interaction with me and I get that interaction. It's a substitute. It is not primary or what we want, but so far it's worked for us.
I'm going to steal that from you and not tell anybody. Now, we've all three kind of danced around this, or all three of you. Let's get into number one, online drive-in service, whatever we're doing right now. What does that replace from our normal setting? And then, more importantly, what we're really maybe not doing a good job of replacing, maybe we can't do. There are things we get out of not just a church service, it's not just a worship service, but there's connections in the body and fellowship before and after, things that happen during altar service. Normally,
Yes.
I preach to the altar.
Yes.
I teach for your Tuesdays.
Right.
I teach to change your Thursdays. But I'm preaching for an altar service for something that happened right now.
Right.
So there are things that I haven't found a way to substitute, and I'm worried about certain people, everybody, myself and everybody else, because that's missing. So what do you think we can, the needs we can meet, and the things that we're just unable to get done right now? Because I feel like if our church members are conscious of that and aware of that, they can recognize what's happening to them.
Yes.
And it's because when you realize, so when you find out your blood work comes back, and you know your cholesterol's high or your vitamin E's low, that there are things you can hopefully do. So what do you think we're just doing a good job of, and is there not even maybe a way to fix it right now? I'm going to stutter like you.
I think on some aspects, some things can never be replaced. You cannot replace the altar. It's just, there is no substitute for an altar. Period. So let's just take that part off the table, because I don't see how you cannot replace the going and laying hands on somebody and praying them through to the
That's
Holy
illegal.
Ghost, or and you can't, somebody that is, you're wanting to anoint them with oil and pray the prayer of faith over them.
Right.
Things that are biblical mandates, we can't completely fulfill that right now in the current situation. Now, but what we have to be able to do is still minister on their level.
Yes.
Preach to the home. Let me tell you, it has to be in the house. The fathers of the home have to be the priests of their home when they're there. If they're, if it's a single mother or a widow or something, then they have to step up. I understand that. But the family has to be the focal point. And we need to focus on the homes. We need to be telling our church, this is what your house has to do. Because right now, I can't do that. Right now, as your pastor, I cannot do that. I cannot have you come to the altar and pray for you. You need to have your family do this right now. In fact, when you look at in 2 Kings 4, what the prophet asked the widow, what do you have in your house? What is in your house? And the miracle came out of what was already in the house. So you have to have something in the house. And so as pastors, we have to minister to the house right now. And because the outflow of spirituality, I heard it said this week, has to come from the home. It can't come from the church. It has to come from the home. It comes from the home into the church, then into the community. And the only way that we're going to reach our community is if it starts in the home. Because if it is only at the church, they are only surviving Sunday to Sunday, then they are on spiritual life support.
Yes, right.
And they will never survive. So families have to step up, especially during this time, and take that crucial role of being the spiritual family that says, you know what, we're unable to gather in a traditional sense now, but we are going to serve God. We're going to have our family altar. We're going to have our family devotion. We're going to have our prayer time, our study of the Word, and then that's where that's where it has to be, especially now.
I'll share a story connected to that. Recently, in one of our services, which was online or just on Facebook, and one of the church, he gathered his family together, said it's church time, and they assembled in the living room, and they watched the service and participated in the service. Then at the end, they invited some family members, not a part of our church, over.
Oh, that's excellent.
All right, so they watched the service, and then at the end of the service, when we were praying, they turned on worship music and start praying. And this couple that was there, they were at a point where they were fixing to call it quits.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
Before they were done that evening, they were restored.
Wow.
Praise God.
And,
Wonderful.
that happened in their home. So that's
Because of one invitation.
That's what's going to happen.
Yeah.
That's what's
You
gonna
said
happen.
something, and I got this comment from somebody in our church, and it made us change what we were doing. Typically we would minister online, and then that would be the end of the broadcast.
No.
Done. What they said is, can you have that music playing, that worship time? That way we as a family can be
that's
gathered
great.
together and be praying during that time. So we are carrying that over now, our typical altar length of time, so those families have that
That's a great
opportunity
idea.
to gather together and pray
Yeah, create
together, and they are still in that atmosphere.
We have done that from the beginning. We start 5 to 10 minutes before the start of the service with altar music playing, and they know that's our pre-service prayer. It's replaced our pre-service prayer, but there is that time, and they know, and they'll come on and they'll still do their greetings like they would normally when they come into church. First 5 minutes of comments on our feed is going to be, hey sis, we miss you, hey brother, good to see you, glad you're here. It's the interaction.
Oh, that's nice.
That's what they get. And then after I'm done, we leave our music going for an altar service, and I go down and I make sure that I'm in the altar praying like I would normally. I want them to hear me. As their pastor, I want them to know their pastor is praying right now. It ain't just preach, teach, pour my heart out, and the next thing is silence. Because we've always had an altar call. I mean, in Pentecostals of Marshall, if we have a banquet, we might have an altar call. There's none of this Wednesday night, no altar call kind of thing. I believe in the altar call.
Absolutely right.
So it's always been a part of it. And what I have found and very grateful for was that the majority of those logged in will stay on for that extra 10 minutes.
Yeah.
They're logged in because you see them logged on. And their comments aren't as much, which I appreciate, because that means hopefully they're praying, not
Well, they're
doing
like some of
dishes.
our people that are like out in the foyer fixing water.
Exactly.
They're still listening.
Right, exactly. But, we will have great attendance as far as families connected, and we'll have anywhere from 250 to 450 comments for a single service.
That's awesome.
So it lets me know that they are engaged, they're amens, and I'll even say I'm going to give you 5 seconds to type amen on that. Maybe that helps stimulate a few more amens and a few more comments, but it isn't the same. But we're trying to, like you asked,
What can we reproduce?
what can we reproduce? I think those are the things that we can reproduce. You can reproduce an altar call. And it's up to, like you said, from the home. They've got to come. I feel encouraged by the response of my core in our church and the responses that we're seeing online, that the home is being strengthened, Brother Hayes. And I trust that strength will translate to revival, stronger more positive whenever we are able to reconvene again. But I do believe with you 100% that it's transitioned from a Sunday to Sunday, or Sunday, Wednesday, Sunday atmosphere to we've got to bring this into the home.
Yeah.
And I hope that that's what we're generating.
Well, you know, you shared the story of a marriage that was put back together because of one invitation to online church. It's
Right.
amazing what a little effort will do.
Yes.
I
That's
tell our
good.
people all the time, there's two aspects to supernatural, super and natural. And
Mhm.
only God can do the
The
super.
super,
I doesn't
right.
worry about that. What can we do? Right?
That's
At
good.
the end, he just
I like
talked
that.
about the impact of the home and the family
Yeah.
granted. And you referenced that. You know, the American home, the American family has been on life support for some years.
Yes, sir.
Divorce rates are actually going down, although the number of marriages are going down too. It's
Right.
a millennial statistic, and I'm not sure how to untangle it. There's a huge piece of misinformation that's been out. I've talked a lot about it. They tell us 50% of marriages end in divorce, and that's true, but 77% of first-time marriages last forever.
Right.
Those other 23% typically are
Are
married 3 and 4 times, and they make the divorce rate.
Right.
But during this pandemic, I've noticed just the people I'm connected to. Frankly, there are people that I love and know whose marriages have been in trouble, and both of them being off and home has kind of forced them
Yes.
to live in the same bubble. And there are marriages I've seen that have been saved.
Yes.
But then there are other marriages that are on the rocks right now.
Right.
And I don't mean necessarily in our church. Those are people I'm connected to. There are marriages that maybe we all thought were fine, and through a combination of all that time together, or through a combination of financial pressure, frankly,
Yes.
all these different things. You know, it's an odd thing,
Yeah.
and there's a dynamic there. And so, if
Right.
somebody can speak to that, I mean,
Well-
I'm concerned.
Yes.
You said a key word there, that was pressure. And you referenced it earlier about how this pandemic's been a catalyst to exponentially move things forward. I am convinced that pressure does not produce in us, it reveals what is already in us. I use the toothpaste adage, you know, you squeeze a thing of toothpaste, it doesn't produce, it reveals what is already inside of us. So I feel like right now is a good time, like you said earlier, tying this all together, that people are being woken up to where they really are at in God, and what is being revealed in them they're not happy with, and because of that is a prime opportunity for us to add our natural effort and let God do the super aspect of it in bringing souls and lives closer to God. I believe that God can spin this. I know that He can, to further His work and His will. So,
Absolutely. I think stress and pressure will bring out the best in people and the worst in people.
right.
Makes diamonds and burst pipes.
Yeah, so it does all of that, and I think that, of course, that all is determined by who you are, or what is in you,
Right.
and it can't come out if it's not in there, you know. And I know, personally speaking, there are times in my life when I know, okay, if that's coming out of me, something, you know, that I can't blame that on this
Outside.
pressure or this
Right.
stress. It's me, you know.
Yeah,
I've got to
right.
deal with that. I think this helps people realize where they are, and helps them to to accept that and
Right.
and do something about it.
Be deliberate about
Be
it.
You got
deliberate.
to,
Yes,
you
sir.
have to consciously and conscientiously do something about it. You know, it's not just going to happen. You know, and I believe this gives us an opportunity to do that. I've met some pastors earlier. Last week actually, local pastors in Carthage that said, "Look, can we get together?" You know?
Yeah.
I said, "Well, sure." So I came to the meeting, and it was pointed out that this one pastor, he said, "In my neighborhood, I'm seeing families taking walks together."
Oh, yes, sir.
Oh, yeah.
He said, "I've never seen them
Yes.
take a walk together, but now they're taking a walk together." He said, "And the children are laughing and having this uproariously good time. And I've never seen those kids laugh."
Yeah.
You know, so there's a healthy side of this thing too. If we can capture that, you know, and like you say, it's a family, it's a home, and this is our opportunity, you know, to, if we can feed the home the right things and make them healthy, then
Oh, yeah.
there's a lot of good that can happen.
Right.
So,
You know, we had a storm. We were supposed to do this last Monday,
Mhm.
and we had a storm on Easter Sunday. We were without power here for 4 days, I think, and there was no Wi-Fi. for several days. And no internet, no computer gaming, no social media. And so we got to know our kids, and it turns out they're really nice people. But seriously, we've got to be so deliberate. We've got to be so for sure. Well, let me ask you guys this, because all these topics tie together. What do you believe, number one, the role, and we've danced around most of this probably, of the local church is right now during the pandemic, and then the role of the local church member, the individual child of God? Because we can talk about what we can't do. We can't fellowship in person. We have people that need that to survive. And I tell our people, we need you to come to fellowship. If you're not a fellowship person, there are other people that are, and they need you. And the altar call, even if you don't feel something bursting in your soul, there are people there that need you to pray with them. This isn't something we can't be a me-centric, self-centered Christian. We've got to do some things for the greater good of the body. So we know we can't fellowship in person. We can't do live altar service. We can't all gather together in person and worship and rejoice together. We can't. What can we do? Well, we've talked about what we're doing as a church, and maybe we want to get into that some more. But individual Christians, what do you think the most important thing that they can do as a church member, not just a child of God, but a member of the Pentecostals, a Marshall, or Danger Hill? What do you think? Where should the focus be right now? What can we do?
Well, I tell our church people to please tune in. If they can make the drive-in service that we started out, make that. Be faithful where they can be faithful. Be faithful in your attendance. Be faithful in your giving. Be faithful in your family, in your prayer. All of those things don't fall by the wayside. Faithfulness should never fall by the wayside, no matter what you're doing.
Absolutely.
So the key word through that is faithful.
Yeah.
And just be faithful right now.
Right.
Well, we have what we have pushed is connecting with one another and encouraging one another. Luckily, it just so happened that at the beginning of this year, I felt led to start a small groups ministry within our church, and we had that. We had our leaders of our small group ministries set up, and they had their group geographically is how we orchestrated it, where you were located in relationship to one another, to make it amiable for them to interact. But what has been key is that those leaders have reached out to their group consistently, not just the pastor. I've been on the phone, blowing up the phone with text message, phone calls, reaching out, thinking about you, praying about you. Is there anything I can do for you? They expect that and they need that. But to receive it from another member of the body has been vital to the strength of our church. I think that's been one of the key roles that one member can do, and the local churches, that is reach out to the other members.
Absolutely.
And let them know. Yes. Another thing that we've been able to do is that has happened is we have a family in our church that has a farm, and they have chickens, and they raise their they have hens, laying hens and everything like that. They have supplied eggs through all of this at the church. And if anybody needed eggs, they've been able to come up and get free eggs whenever the store, whenever Walmart, when all this pandemic hit, and that you couldn't, you could go to the church and get it. And it wasn't for outside or the community. This was for the church body, one member giving to another member. So that's been so encouraging. And you hit the nail on the head, Brother Hayes, when you said faithful in your giving and your support, because there are those members within our congregation that have lost jobs, they've lost hours, they've lost benefits, and financially they're in need. And I believe that charity must begin at the house of God. If we give to anybody, we need to support within our own house first, and then to the extended community. But because those that still maintain their jobs and still maintain their incomes were faithful to give, we have given money, we've given support, we've given checks, and we've just been a funnel to those needs. So it's one member giving to another member is what it's been. So they're faithful giving and support, tithing and offerings, missions. We've not had to drop one missionary.
Oh, that's awesome.
And I'm thankful for that. So you're 100% right, Brother Hayes, in saying faithful in their giving and their support, logging in, because that's been vital to help us, I think, as a member, be effective in serving their church.
I mean, there's no doubt that is the key, the core, is faithful people. and that's at any time and all times, you know. And to be faithful really comes down to being full of faith.
Absolutely.
Yes, it is.
And if our people can stay full of faith and keep believing, and we've got to inspire them with the Word of God, help them with the Word of God. And one of the things I think that people have to do is there are some people who need more encouragement than others.
Absolutely.
You know, and then you know, and what I've tried to instill in the people is, hey, call somebody. If you need encouragement, if you'll call somebody, you'll be encouraged.
Yes, you will.
True.
That's good.
If you're the kind of person who needs
That's
encouragement, the best thing you can do is reach
Be an
out
encourager.
and talk to someone, call them to encourage them, and
Give them a
bless
shot.
you. And that,
Right.
that creates that flow. If you want to be encouraged and you need to be encouraged, call somebody.
Yeah.
And you know, when it's over and done, you'll be encouraged.
Right.
And our people have done good at that. Stay in touch. We form some groups and this type of thing where we can stay in touch, share information. And I think that because we don't have that weekly meeting, you know, one of the things that happens is you start to realize how much you love people.
Yes, it does.
And how much you miss them, you know what I'm saying? And I know most people are like, I can't wait until we can come back together. And I think that's a good thing. It's caused us to realize how blessed we were to be able to meet and worship together.
Absolutely.
Because I would say, I'll be the first one to say it, I took it for granted. We're
Oh,
going to
we
be
do.
here next
Sure we
week
do.
and
Sure we
I'll
do.
see you and we can lay hands on each other and pray for each other and be together in the house of God.
Yeah.
Then suddenly, it's
It's
ripped
all
away.
right.
And you start realizing how precious the people of God,
Yes.
your friends, your
Yes.
brothers, your sisters are, and how much we need to be connected to one another. And that's got to happen one way or another by telephone, text messaging, Facebook. After we can do that effectively, we got to stay in touch with each other. You know.
Well, and if people can realize the power of that, you know, my church family really is my family, and most of our church feels that way.
Yes.
It's not because I'm the pastor,
Mhm.
but if I come to your hospital room, which I can't do right now,
Right.
then I'm sort of supposed to. And the people I call and check on,
Sure.
but the power when someone who
Yeah.
is under no obligation,
Right.
when they reach out to one another, the
Yeah.
impact is
Yeah.
so
Yeah,
magnified.
it's
Sure.
powerful.
It's
Yes.
so magnified, and there's no doubt you can bless your way out of curses. I mean,
Yes,
you have
yes.
to find a way to bless
Yes.
somebody else. And you know, Brother Landry, I want to say this carefully. One concern of mine: normally we have 3 services a week,
Mhm.
and all these other events, and maybe 1 or 2 nights a week I'm not at a church event or a Bible study group, and you can kind of tell who's missing,
Mhm.
and you can sort of tell who's struggling,
Right.
and you keep a pretty good read on it. And right now we don't have that. And so
Yes, right.
we're all kind of praying and then shooting in the dark
Mhm.
because, you know, I put my attention where the trouble is or where
Yes.
the momentum is.
Yeah.
And right now, you know, it's hard to get a read on that.
Yeah, that's true.
You know, we need the community of faith. I mean, I think one of the most overstated statements that's come out is church outside the 4 walls, church outside the 4 walls. Well, yes, we do ministry outside the 4 walls, but we need what happens inside of those
Yes.
4 walls.
Irreplaceable.
Right.
You know, and that's the thing. If one thing can happen through this is that we never take the house of God for granted again.
Again.
Right.
yes.
And I'm hoping that people that did take it for granted, that weren't as faithful
Right.
before, realize I can't survive
Yeah.
without this connectivity.
Yeah.
You know, we this year we were the same. We started our small groups,
Yeah.
and we kicked that off, and that has been tremendous. Well, then now everything has been limited,
Right.
even in that regard. And so our small group leaders are still doing a great job in maintaining that
Yes.
connectivity. As pastor, I'm trying to reach as many people as I can, but again, you know, we
Right.
want everybody involved. And what I've been doing is also encouraging our church family to just do random acts of kindness
Yes.
for each other and
Fantastic.
for people in the community. Just and not for any recognition, do it anonymously.
Yes.
Help somebody out. That, you know, that way it's coming from them. That
Yes.
way, you know, the church can be a funnel. We can funnel it through there
Right.
for that if that's what they prefer to do.
Right.
But be kind. Use
Right.
this as an opportunity to touch that, because God is going to bring that back on, you know, and bless you as a result.
One thing that I found about our small groups aspect is, like you said, Brother Hayes, it is not doing what it was doing, but what it has done, it has caused my small groups ministers to take ownership of their group and ownership of that ministry. And I have not had to pressure, I have not had to push. It's something that they're passionate about and they feel responsible. It's my job to take care of connecting with this group of people, and they've taken ownership of that ministry, and it's become their ministry within the church. So what you've done is diversified and multiplied your role as a pastor. Now, like you said, Brother Moore, it means so much to them to know that someone that's not a pastor, not in a position, not in a title, but just somebody that's another member or part of the church cares enough to call them and contact them. And Brother Lamtrip, you made the statement a while ago, I believe, that said that some have other needs that you don't have. We have healthcare professionals in our church, nurses, director of nurses, nurse practitioners. They are in the direct line of this COVID-19, and their needs are greater and different
Unique.
than anyone else's because they've never been in this situation. So whenever the rest of the body realizes that and begins to minister text messages without the need of a response, without the expectation of calling me back and say, oh, I'm so glad you called me, just simply, we're thinking about you, we're praying for you, and we're covering you with prayer, it means the world to them.
Absolutely.
And especially not just coming from the pastor, but the body at large.
I
So,
think people are realizing how important they are.
yes, they are.
Absolutely.
Of course, Paul's teachings on the body of Christ, we don't have time to even go there really. But in conjunction with that idea, I've shared this before, that your body, human body, and he compares the human body to the church,
Yes.
which is the people of God. It's not a building, no, it's the people of God. People are the church. But in conjunction with that idea, the human body has a series of muscles in the diaphragm that are called adductor muscles. And all they do is hold you together, basically.
That's
They're, and I said, you've probably never heard anybody say, oh, dude, what awesome adductors. That don't happen, but you know what? Without those muscles, the body doesn't stay together. There are people who have a calling and a gifting, and it is to hold people, they pull the body, hold the body. They just have a ministry of encouragement or whatever it may be. That they just kind of hold things together, and so at a time like this is when we really need those kind of people who will make that phone call, who will reach out and hold the body together,
And while we're on this subject, you've all pastored long enough to know this for sure. You ever notice that when someone's shut in, and they're a brand new shut in especially, we'll all, if we live long enough, that's the eventual fate of all of us, or someone who has a massive surgery with a complication and they're in the hospital for weeks and then months.
Extended, yes.
Or they're in a physical rehab for weeks and then months. You ever noticed that somewhere between week 2 and 3, everybody ever known, the world kind of turns a little grayer. And unnatural depression sets in. No matter how happy and good natured they are, and the next thing you know, they're making lists of who hasn't called them and who hasn't come to see them. And I walked into somebody's hospital where they'd been hospitalized for months, and they said, Brother Moore, other than a couple of people I'm close to, you're the only person that's come to see me. And she said, I thought my church family loved me. And I leaned down and I brought up a deceased church member's precious lady. I said, did you love Sister so-and-so? And they said, yeah. I said, she was in a nursing home the last 6 months of her life. I said, yes, and how many times did you go see her?
Yeah.
And the answer was none. I said, now everything you're about to tell me, I want you to give everybody else the credit for that right now. So right now, a lot of people who are healthy and young and vibrant are shut in for the first time in their life.
Yeah.
Well, I told him earlier, I'm getting like 2 weeks to the gallon. It's nowhere to go. And so I think we have to be aware of that. Number one, so people can look at themselves and kind of look in the mirror and say, it's really not as bad as I feel like it is. And then, so they can look outside of that.
Definitely.
And recognize other people feel this way too. And instead of wondering why Julie or Billy hasn't called me, I can call Julie and Billy and accomplish stuff. Well, I know we're probably way over time. I have no idea how long we've been talking, but there's 2 quick things. One, I don't have the energy to be a conspiracy theorist, and I've got sweet people in my church who think we created the virus, and the Chinese, and the Democratic Party, and the aliens, and you know what? They may all be right. I tell people, doesn't matter where it came from, we got to do the same thing. But so I personally, and I don't want a doctoral debate on this. If y'all disagree, that's what forums are for. I love it. I don't know that God created COVID-19. And I don't know that the devil created COVID-19, but I know both of them are trying to use it. Because the devil will work through any means and pull at every fabric.
Yes.
And all things work together for good to those
God
who love
can turn
God.
anything into it.
I actually had something written down about that. You know, it's we're not victims. We're not victims of not of the virus, not of the government. God is still in control.
Amen.
And
Absolutely.
you said, you know, we all know things that all things work together for good. Well, Paul ends that in Romans 8 saying, I am persuaded. The reason he was persuaded, and I heard this week, and I love, is the reason that he was persuaded is he was looking back that he knew God is still in control.
Absolutely.
So our persuasion comes from knowing that no matter where this came from, no matter how it started, God is still in control.
Right.
He is still God. He's still on the throne. He is not worried one iota
I believe
about
that.
it.
No.
And so as a church, we don't have to be either.
Right.
You know, and so so we have got to maintain the focus and the vision and the commitment that God has given us, that we are going to keep moving forward in every possible way that we can. It may have changed, our methods may have to change,
Right.
but God is still in control.
Yeah.
Yes.
I made the statement Sunday in the sermon that COVID-19 is not anywhere the worst thing, by far the worst thing that the church has endured or gone through.
No.
And it has come through far greater and been triumphant, and we are too. So
Absolutely.
we're not
Amen.
operating out of fear, but rather
Absolutely.
Yes.
Definitely.
Forward.
Yes.
Much more dangerous than COVID-19, and I shared a Bible study a couple weeks ago on this. Far more dangerous is hopelessness.
Yes.
It will destroy far more than COVID-19 ever could.
I believe that.
Mhm.
And as long as we are not hopeless, we are not helpless.
We're not
That's
helpless.
right.
That's right.
Not helpless. There are things we can do.
Yeah.
God will not give us a commission and then leave us to ourselves.
No.
He's going to help us, you know.
Yeah.
And God's going to use us, as you said. God is going to use this, and He's going to use us
You'll
in
get
this.
glory
Yeah.
out of all of
He's
it.
going to use us in this,
Right.
in a great way. I'm sure of that.
Yeah.
You know, brother, I appreciate you coming together to do this. There's two things I love and I try to focus on. Number one, I thank God that our fellowship, we all happen to be members of the United Pentecostal Church, our fellowship is a fellowship of ministers that believes in autonomous local churches. And there's great strength in that, and it's fundamentally important. But we also understand that there's only one church,
That's
and
right.
none of us are in competition.
That's right.
No.
You know, none of us are in competition.
Right.
We're different branches of the same military. We're different units of the same army. But you know, we really are brethren. And we're all trying to do the same thing. And I've tried to bend over backwards to make sure the people at Longview First Church know that these other churches, the pastors, they're our friends. You know, you brother are all my friends. I think I've eaten with every one of you. That's where I got these cheeks. And you know, I want everybody to understand that we're in this together.
Yes,
absolutely.
That we're all going to come do
Definitely.
it together. And that just as individual children of God in the local church need one another, I think the greater church has to understand our need of one for another.
Right.
And I want to thank you for opening your homes
Oh,
and
yes,
giving us this
sir.
time.
Thank you so much.
It's a wonderful
Yes,
idea.
it's been great.
And when you called me, I immediately knew in my heart, I want to be a part of this
Right.
because I know I need this.
Yes.
I need you. And,
Right.
you know, and I will say this, every time I've been able to spend a little time with Brother Moore, and when I got to be with you, whenever I would leave, I would have an idea.
Yes.
I would have inspiration.
Oh,
And I would feel a little stronger and better. And I want to thank you for that. You've been a real good friend to us and a brother. And
Right.
what a treat. This
Yes.
I feel marvelously blessed to be able to spend this time. I will look forward to talking more.
yes,
Yes.
sir. And if you brethren are willing, we haven't seen the recording yet. We may watch this and burn it afterwards. But really, if it turns out to be a blessing to all the churches, I mean, I'd be for doing this until they let us get back to regular programming.
I think this
And
is
maybe
great.
afterward.
Yeah, I mean,
I would love to.
this is good. You know, because that is one thing that we've really pushed at our church is the unity. You know, that we have to look outside and realize that the church is so much bigger than what our individual vision
Yeah.
is as a church, and that you know we are brethren of that like-minded precious faith,
Yes.
and that we are headed in the same direction. And man, thank you so much for this.
I appreciate it. I'm definitely going to play this for my church. You brethren have brought so many things to light, and I know that it will minister to my people. So I'm excited to share it with them, and thank you for sharing yourselves with our congregation. So we definitely appreciate it. So thank you.
Well, and the truth is, we've, maybe not the four of us exclusively, but we've all done this at tables with one another
Oh yes,
for
definitely.
years.
Years.
For years.
Right.
And hopefully when this is over even, I don't know, maybe we could find a way to do it on a Sunday night and rotate it one church. So we'll figure it out. But man, I'm so ready to see anybody. I miss people I don't like. So, God bless you. Why don't we end with a word of prayer? Just ask God to bless all our people. Let's do that together. Right?
Lord, we thank you for our church. We thank you for our body of Christ. Thank you, Lord, for our fellow laborers. I'm asking you, Lord, that you bless our ministry. I'm asking you, Lord, to keep your hand upon my brothers. I'm asking you, Lord, to guide and direct them. In Jesus' name, walk with their hearts, strength, give them wisdom, give them understanding, God. Give them anointing, God, to weather this storm, Lord. I pray, direct them. In Jesus' name we pray. Thank you for it, Lord. Praise God.
In Jesus' name. Amen. Amen. Tune in next week if you want to be a commercial sponsor. We'll put your... No.